This movie opens in a bull training ranch known as Casa del Toro in Spain. Based on a popular children's book, the movie shows the bravery and loyalty of a soft-hearted bull. Moving forward, the scene shifts to three young calves who seem to be really excited. They're waiting to see which of the older bulls in the ranch will be picked to fight a matador. Amongst them is a little gray calf called Ferdinand. He's a little peculiar because of his short stature and tender heart. Ferdinand doesn't like fights. Instead, he loves a peaceful environment where he can just admire nature. On the day of the fight, all the calves want to watch the match, but Ferdinand is busy tending to a rose that he had planted in the field. Because of this, he gets picked on by the other calves, but mostly by Valiant and his buddies called Guapo and Bones. While bullying Ferdinand, Valiant boasts about how he will be the fiercest bull when he grows up and that he will be a champ. His main aim is to fight a matador and become superior to everyone else. Because of this reason, he's very mean and stern. However, Ferdinand is the complete opposite. This ultimately causes Valiant to mock him all the time. One day, Valiant headbutts Bones so hard that he's sent flying toward the rose that Ferdinand had watered. When Valiant sees the rose, he starts making fun of Ferdinand. At that moment, a bunch of older bulls start fighting. All the calves watch them with keen interest and keep talking about who might get to fight the matador. The older bulls, which include Ferdinand and Valiant's fathers, start to fight for victory. In the end, the matador chooses Ferdinand's father. Despite being the strongest bull on the ranch, Ferdinand's dad is very gentle with his son. He adores Ferdinand and promises to come back. Finally, he says goodbye to his son and leaves. Meanwhile, Valiant's own dad coldly dismisses him. This enrages the calf, so he stomps on Ferdinand's flower out of spite. Later on, Ferdinand sees the truck that took his dad return back to the ranch. He starts to look around for his dad, but it turns out that he never came back. Ferdinand realizes something must have happened to him. Heartbroken, the timid calf runs away from the ranch and escapes all his captors. Anxious and scared, he keeps on running. At one point, he becomes extremely tired and eventually gets lost. He's in the middle of a massive forest when he hears a dog barking. This sound causes him to panic, and so he takes some steps back only to slip and fall down a cliff. When Ferdinand wakes up, he sees a little girl named Nina approaching him. Ferdinand is extremely scared of her, but starts to calm down slowly. He then sniffs the flower on her head and Nina giggles. Soon, Ferdinand realizes that the girl is very kind. He starts to open up to her. Sometime after, Nina takes him outside where he sees a man named Juan and his dog, Paco. It turns out that Juan is actually a florist who also happens to be Nina's father. The entire family is quite welcoming of Ferdinand. They absolutely adore him. Soon after, Nina takes Ferdinand to a place full of flowers. When the calf sees the view, he's ecstatic. This is all he had ever wanted. As time passes, Nina and Ferdinand become inseparable. The little girl raises Ferdinand as her pet and best friend. Eventually, the two share an unbreakable bond with each other, much to Paco's annoyance. Years quickly pass by and Ferdinand grows up into an enormous bull. However, he's still very gentle and friendly. Now all grown up, Ferdinand considers Nina and Juan to be his family. He thinks of Paco like his brother, and even though the dog won't admit it, he loves it when Ferdinand calls him his brother. Together, all four of them spend their time in each other's company. Everything just seems so perfect. Juan is also delighted to see his daughter so happy now that Ferdinand is here. Meanwhile, Ferdinand has never been happier. He loves Juan's farm and takes care of each and every animal there. Soon, the flower festival arrives. Needless to say, Ferdinand is very excited. He loves the way the whole city gets covered in gorgeous roses. Just before leaving, Nina walks up to him and asks him if he is ready to go. Ferdinand bellows in response and Nina laughs. The two are about to leave for the festival. However, that's when Juan comes up to them and says that they can't bring Ferdinand anymore. He's way too big and people might be intimidated. Hearing this, Nina becomes extremely upset and sternly claims that if Ferdinand can't go, then she won't attend the festival either. She sits down on the ground with her arms and legs crossed grumpily, and Ferdinand does the same. Sometime later, Juan finally convinces Nina and explains his reasoning to her. In response, the little girl apologizes to Ferdinand and leaves him in the farm along with Paco. After they leave, Ferdinand decides to go to the festival on his own. However, when he gets into town, all the other people are terrified of him. At one point, Nina spots Ferdinand and runs up to him excitedly. Just then, Ferdinand gets stung on the butt by a bee, causing him to yell in pain. When the people there hear the massive bull bellowing loudly, they start panicking. Everyone starts running around as they think that Ferdinand is about to attack. Even Ferdinand starts panicking and runs around in a frenzy. This ultimately causes the authorities to arrive at the scene. Soon, all the people at the festival started calling Ferdinand a wild beast and a monster, making him sad. Right then, Paco tells Ferdinand to run away. The latter agrees and ends up hiding inside a china shop. The bull then tries his hardest to not get noticed by the old lady who works there. Unfortunately, he ends up sneezing, causing a total mess. Soon after, Ferdinand gets taken in, and Nina sadly watches him go. Later, Ferdinand is brought back to Casa del Toro, where he meets a coaching goat named Lupe. Ferdinand hates the ranch and asks for Lupe's help, who just squeals in excitement. Ecstatic, she talks about how it's been a dream of hers to train a bull. Ferdinand then tries to tell Lupe that he wants to escape the ranch. He has no interest in training. Sadly, Lupe just doesn't listen to him. Instead, she takes him to the bulls. There, Ferdinand reconnects with all his childhood friends who are now all grown up. In addition to Valiant, Guapo, and Bones, a Scottish bull named Angus is also present at the ranch. Apparently, Angus can't see clearly due to the hair blocking his eyes. Not just that, a quiet yet tough bull named Maquina is also present there, who is rumored to have been made in a lab. When Guapo and Bones see Ferdinand, they are surprised by how much he has grown. However, Valiant isn't impressed. In fact, he's even more of a jerk now, and all he wants is to fight and beat Ferdinand. A while later, Valiant starts kicking Ferdinand and jokes about how he had run away years ago with his tail between his legs. Ferdinand is enraged to hear this, but he stays silent nonetheless. He was and never will be violent. After seeing that Ferdinand has absolutely no interest in fighting, Valiant leaves angrily. This leaves the former quite stunned. Later, Lupe explains to Ferdinand that everyone in the stable hates one another. She then takes him back to his stable. Ferdinand eventually arrives at his stable and is stunned to see that the place is actually quite small. Once there, Lupe tells him that she lives in a bucket. She then quickly falls asleep, and so does Ferdinand. While they are sleeping, 3 hedgehogs sneak into the room and try to steal their belongings. Soon, Ferdinand wakes up because of the commotion. Once he's fully awake, he notices the hedgehogs, who are now dancing in order to show him that they're innocent. Seeing their innocence, Ferdinand tries to let them go, but Lupe wakes up just then. She then angrily calls the hedgehogs filthy weasels. When they all calm down, the 3 hedgehogs introduce themselves as Una, Dos, and Cuatro. Although they're really frightened, Ferdinand shows them that he is a nice guy. Soon enough, the hedgehogs start to warm up to him. Later, Ferdinand also ends up meeting the 3 snooty German horses named Hans, Greta, and Klaus. He quickly learns that these horses think they're so much better than the bulls, who, according to them, are really stinky and not well groomed. The next day, the ranch is visited by a popular but smug bullfighter named El Primero. He is there to pick out the toughest bull so that he can fight them in the ring for what is set to be his final fight. Seeing the matador arrive, Valiant becomes confident that he will get picked. He wants to prove to everyone there that he's the strongest. Soon after, the bulls are set in the ring. However, Ferdinand just refuses to fight. He doesn't even enter the ring. Meanwhile, Guapo gets way too nervous, Angus can't see, and Bones happens to be too small. When El Primero sees the commotion, he expresses his disappointment and disgust with the bulls. Enraged, he tells the owner that if he doesn't get a proper bull in 2 days, no bullfighter will ever select a bull from his farm again. A while later, the others start mocking Ferdinand because he doesn't want to fight. They tease him, saying he's scared. Just then, Guapo starts shouting in excitement. When the others go out to check, they see that Guapo has been loaded into a truck. The poor bull thinks that El Primero picked him. He has no idea that he's being taken to a nearby slaughterhouse. At that moment, Valiant tells Ferdinand that if a bull doesn't fight, then he just becomes meat. That night, in the shed, Ferdinand sees Bones crying because of Guapo's death. Ferdinand comforts Bones, and soon, they become friends. The very next day, the bulls start training for the fight. At one point, Angus is about to hit a bunny. When Ferdinand sees this, he runs to the rescue and saves the bunny. However, he ends up causing a disaster. The bunny, who almost passed away, angrily throws a carrot at Ferdinand's face and runs away. Meanwhile, Lupe is excited because of Ferdinand's strength. Just then, everyone hears Angus shouting at a machine while screaming that the object pushed him. Ferdinand then tells Angus that it was actually him and apologizes. He also licks Angus's hair up, allowing the latter to finally be able to see. Angus is overjoyed and starts looking at the sky, fascinated by it. Soon, Ferdinand and Angus become friends. On the other hand, Lupe starts shouting at Ferdinand for being too nice. She asks him to think of the fight as a dance. However, at that moment, the 3 smug horses start mocking them, claiming that bulls can't dance as they have really short legs. In order to prove their worth, Ferdinand, Angus, Maquina, and Bones challenge the horses to a dance-off, which ultimately results in the horses getting shocked by an electric fence. In the end, they all scurry away after being humiliated. As time passes, Valiant remains to be the only one who is disdainful of Ferdinand. Because of this, he goes on to pick a fight with Ferdinand and continues to antagonize him, calling him a coward for refusing to fight. At one point, Ferdinand has had enough, so he tries to defend himself. However, this brawl causes one of Valiant's horns to break off. El Primero watches all this unfold and is thoroughly impressed by Ferdinand's strength. Despite Ferdinand always trying to walk away from violence, he is selected as the fighter. Meanwhile, Valiant is sent to the slaughterhouse. Scared and anxious, Ferdinand decides to break out and return to the farm to be with Nina. He doesn't want to fight the matador at all. He somehow convinces Lupe to help him so that she can feel loved like he is. Lupe agrees, and together they manage to convince the hedgehogs to help them by bribing them with a toy flower that plays music. The hedgehogs instantly accept the offer. Later, with help from the hedgehogs, Ferdinand and Lupe attempt to sneak out of the ranch through the main house. However, during this process, all of them end up falling into a car, which ultimately causes loud music to be played. Panicking, the hedgehogs start dancing in front of the doors in order to distract the workers from going inside the house. While inside, Ferdinand passes through a wall which also has a picture of his father hung up. His horns are also mounted there. In fact, the whole wall has the horns of bulls sent to fight. This makes Ferdinand realize that no matter what, bulls are destined to be gone, whether it be inside the ring or in a slaughterhouse. Before he and Lupe leave, Ferdinand decides to break out all the other bulls. When he arrives at the shed, he convinces the others to come with him. All the bulls agree with him. However, Ferdinand feels that he can't just leave Valiant. Soon, all of them plan to escape and even save Valiant and Guapo from the slaughterhouse. Ferdinand manages to get into the slaughterhouse where he finds Valiant. Initially, the strong-headed bull refuses to leave, so Ferdinand goes on to save Guapo. Midway through, the animals end up activating the mechanisms that almost eliminate them, but Valiant helps them and they all finally manage to break free. This escapade ultimately makes Valiant on Ferdinand's side. Later, the animals hijack the farmer's truck and head into town. When El Primo sees this, he threatens the ranch owner, Morno, forcing him and his fellow workers to chase after the animals. Meanwhile, Ferdinand and his gang ride through town and cause chaos. Soon, they come across a train yard and head to freedom. The bulls push a small cart to connect to the train, but Ferdinand stays behind to make sure everyone gets on. He is then found by the workers, who take him away for the fight. The news that Ferdinand has been taken to fight El Primo spreads throughout Spain. Even Juan, Nina, and Paco see it on TV. Panicking, Juan and Nina immediately leave for the fight in order to save Ferdinand. Within minutes, a huge crowd gathers at the arena to watch the fight. Lupe, who had stayed behind and was taken with Ferdinand, tries to convince him to fight for his survival. Soon, Ferdinand is forced out into the ring and poked by the workers so that he can fight. But since Ferdinand has absolutely no interest in this, he doesn't even attempt to give a good fight. However, much to his dismay, he ends up hitting El Primo into the wall. Enraged, the matador tries to attack Ferdinand with banderillas, cutting Ferdinand's shoulder. The pain makes Ferdinand angry, and so he bellows loudly. He picks El Primo by the horns and stares into his eyes, apparently frightening the matador. At that moment, Ferdinand realizes that he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He slowly lets the cruel matador down after seeing a rose that fell on the field. The small rose makes Ferdinand reminisce about the tranquility that he felt on the farm with Nina. When El Primo realizes that the bull won't attack him, he prepares to slay Ferdinand. However, he hesitates as the bull resigns himself. The rest of the audience starts to feel bad for Ferdinand. In response, they all yell at El Primo to let Ferdinand live, just as Nina and her father arrive. Because of the pressure, El Primo spares Ferdinand and leaves with his dignity intact. Soon after, Nina rushes onto the field to embrace Ferdinand, and the other bulls show up as well. In the end, Ferdinand and all his friends go back to the farm. Needless to say, Nina couldn't be happier. She loves that her family has grown even more now. When Nina sees Lupe for the first time, she calls the goat adorable, making Lupe feel truly loved for the first time ever. The movie finally concludes with Ferdinand and his friends going to his favorite flower field in order to enjoy the sunset.